Welcome to A Stranger, a Suitcase and a Story. I'm Anton van der Walt. This is a podcast about starting over. It is about what it takes to leave the familiar behind and the courage it takes to begin again in a land that isn't yet home. Together with my co-host Ben Liebenberg, we explore the untold stories of migration. Not just where people went, but why they left, what they held on to, and what they've had to let go. Each episode, we sit down with someone who's made that leap. Someone who's left behind not just places, but languages, careers, communities, and sometimes even parts of themselves. They share what called them forward, what nearly held them back, and what they've come to understand about identity, belonging, and starting again. Produced in partnership with Southern Crossings, a community for South Africans forging new lives in Australia, this podcast is a place to feel seen, heard, and understood. Because this isn't just about visas or paperwork. It's about identity, loss, hope, and the quiet strength it takes to rebuild a life piece by piece. So wherever you are on your journey, arriving, settling, or still thinking about it, welcome. This is where stories connect us all.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This information to customers travelling on the land airways, flight LA 800, code 77, Qantas 321, service to Auckland and Santiago.
Welcome to Stranger, a Suitcase and a Story, episode number 21. Quite amazing. Ben, how are you keeping?
Hello, Anton. No, very well, thank you. A little bit different this time. It's Saturday morning in Australia. Nice, sitting with a cup of coffee. Not the normal, rush to get from work and get this all done. So it's just in a good frame of mind for today and really looking forward to having a good chat.
Yeah, Ben, as many our previous guests said in episode 20, he says, well, you should cork the champagne at episode 21, and so here we are. So we're very, very happy to be at this place. Now, Ben, the reason why it's a Saturday morning with us is that we've got guests from America. This is our second round of guests from America, and today's guests, and I'll just proceed to introduce them, is Kevin and Romaine Mackenzie, or from here onwards we'll call Romaine Rowe. It's much easier for us, and a husband and wife whose story is much about partnership as it about place. So both were born in Johannesburg, though they grew up in different corners of the city. Kevin in Parkmore and River Club, and Rowe in Montgomery Park, shaped by their schools, their neighborhoods, and the ordinary rhythms of South African life. Their move to the United States didn't come from a sudden decision. It started years earlier when Kevin's mother became an American citizen and the family applied for sponsorship. 14 years later, in 2018, the approval finally came through. They chose to take the chance, embrace the adventure, and late to 2019, great timing, Kevin, packed up their lives and moved. They arrived in Chicago in January 2020, driving into the city for the first time on a cold, dark, rainy night, just weeks before the whole world changed. And Kevin carries with him a deep sense of curiosity, entrepreneurship shaped by memories like riding through the cradle of humankind and anchored by objects from home, paintings, photographs, and a Mandela bowl that traveled with him. Rowe brings her own quiet constants, a love for good manners and curiosity, memories of her garden, long drives to her sister's farm, and small, thoughtful gifts she packed for the future of America without knowing exactly when they'd be opened. What helped them settle wasn't one thing, but many: time, routine, their container finally arriving, learning in a new city, meeting new people, and watching their son Max find his feet through sport, especially on the fields of Oz Park. In this conversation, we'll talk about migration as a shared experience, about building new traditions like Thanksgiving, about milestone moments from baseball tryouts to citizenship ceremonies, and about how a couple grows together when everything familiar is left behind. So welcome, Kevin and Ro. We're really stoked to have you, and for us to have a couple on the show today is great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ben. Thank you, Anton. Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll delve into some of the stuff that we talked about in your bio. So we're really keen to do that. But our pod has also got a little tradition that we've developed over time, and it's called a suitcase moment. And every episode that we have, we try and find some interesting historical facts about migration, and especially about South Africans going overseas to a particular place. I'm trying to always connect that to the guests. And this time around, let's talk a little bit about, I've got two really nice stories, historical stories about South Africans that went to America. And so after the Second Anglo-Boer War, that's a bit of time ago, at the end of 1902, former Boer General Ben Viljoen, he was captured in January 1902 and spent time as a POW in St. Helena. Left South Africa, and by 1904 reached the United States and was received by President Theodore Roosevelt. Their February 3, 1904 letter exchange survives in the Roosevelt papers, placing the meeting in Roosevelt's first term. He then helped start a short-lived Boer farming colony in Hacienda Humboldt in Chihuahua, Mexico, before settling just north of the border in New Mexico's Mesilla Valley, where Boer families gathered in Barino, Chamberino, and La Mesa. In 1907, Viljoen's then American wife, Myrtle, was appointed postmistress of Chamberino, and by 1909, he had U.S. citizenship. He served as a major in the New Mexico Territorial National Guard, joined the 1911 push for statehood in Washington, and even took part in the Battle of Ciudad Juarez in 1911 on the revolutionary side. Viljoen died in 1917 in La Mesa and was buried in a Masonic cemetery there. So from a White House reception to a border farming community, that's one early South African path into the United States. Another one was a very famous and prominent singer that came out of South Africa, Miriam Makeba, or Mama Africa. She was born in Johannesburg in March 4, 1932. After early successes with the Manhattan Brothers at home, she made her U.S. debut on November 1, 1959 on the Steve Allen Show, where she sang the Pata Pata song, which was quite popular at the time. And en route to London, she met Harry Belafonte, who helped her gain entry into the United States and build a career there. In 1960, she tried to return to South Africa, and then she discovered her passport has been cancelled. And then that's when she went into exile. That same year, she signed with RCA Victor and released her first U.S. studio album. Through the 1960s, she spoke out against apartheid. In 1968, she married Stokely Carmichael, who she later divorced. But it was a union that drew FBI interest, as he was a civil rights figure who served as honorary prime minister of the then Black Panther Party. In 1990, after years abroad, she returned to South Africa on a French passport, following Nelson Mandela's encouragement. Miriam Makeba's signature hit Pata Pata cracked the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 at number 12 in 1967, and she helped popularize Tongtongwane, the click song, a traditional Xhosa wedding song. And in 1966, she and Harry Belafonte won a Grammy for the best folk recording for An Evening with Belafonte and Makeba, widely cited as the first Grammy win by an African artist. So yes, some interesting.
Incredible.
Yeah.
You're an historian. Well done.
Yeah.
That's a great, those are two great stories.
Yeah, they are. They are. And I think, Ben, you might remember Miriam, right?
I actually went to one of the concerts. Well, we went to the Klein Karoo Kunstefees must be 96 or 97, one of the two. And she just came back, obviously, as you said, from overseas. And and that was one of her shows. And a remarkable lady, actually,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kevin and Rose, so there's where we start. So I think that what is always nice is to know there's so many people that came before us. Often we think it's quite a challenge and it's unique, and then, we find out that ours are really easy. So Ben, do you wanna give us a start here?
Yeah, I think before we get into your journey to America, what Anton and I normally do is just find out a little bit more about the people and who you are and where you're from. So Anton said you both grew up or were born in Johannesburg. So maybe just give us a little bit of insight of your life. Ro, maybe we'll start with you, where you grew up and what it was like, and just childhood memories.
Sure. Well, thanks. It's great to be here. So, grew up in Johannesburg in Montgomery Park, just near the West Park Cemetery, if you know where that is. Grew up there, went to Roosevelt, Franklin D. Roosevelt, actually, to start with, and then Roosevelt. So maybe U.S. presidents were in my future.
It looks like it.
Yeah. So grew up there, studied at Wits Technikon, did marketing, and kind of like stayed in that area, right? I'm the youngest of three. I have an older brother who now actually lives in Germany. He's working in construction in Germany, building data centers. And my sister, who married a farmer down in the Eastern Cape. So my sister actually kind of like followed back in my mom's footsteps. So my mom comes from a family of 1820 settlers who came out, on the Mayflower and all those good ships back in the day. And obviously my mom grew up then in the Eastern Cape. So she was a real Eastern Capey, having grown up in East London, Hogsback, kind of like Catburg, all of those areas.
Beautiful area there.
Really beautiful. Yeah. So my sister went off to varsity and she met a guy from Cathcart in the Eastern Cape and married him, and she's a farmer's wife. So it was always a blessing to go down there to Cathcart. To still, love it. Although I think it's colder than Chicago. So I'm just going to say that it's not for the faint-hearted. Grew up in Joburg, and Kevin and I met in my late 20s, and we got married when I was 30 and you were 35. And that's where we started our family, and lived ultimately in that time of our life in kind of like the Lone Hill area, and then ended up really back in kind of like the Sandton area when our son went to school. He was at St. David's, Marritt's Brothers in Sandton. So we moved back from kind of like the Lone Hill area, Fourways area, back into Sandton, and that's where we were living when we made the big move. That's a little bit about me.
So tell us a little bit, spark a little bit on your childhood, junior school and high school. What were your memories, and what interests you? What did you like doing? What things kept you going?
Sure. Yeah. Primary school, Franklin D. Roosevelt, netball. I love netball, but I was terrible. I'm not a very good sports person. So my husband, you can see, he's laughing. He thinks it's funny. It's crazy. I was never the sporty one, but I was always intrigued with kind of travel and things like that. So I was kind of like the first one in our family to actually go overseas. It was like my big thing to go just as I'd finished school. So during my school years were kind of like pretty normal. I mean, back in those days, it was, we just kind of like went to school, and every year I think the thing we looked forward to the most was a holiday in Knysna, in actually Sedgefield. We used to go caravanning every year at Lake Pleasant in Sedgefield. And we loved that. That was the family kind of like, that was the thing we looked forward to every year. So, and Roosevelt High was my high school. To be honest, I was never one for kind of like the whole high school thing. I was really happy to leave school. Ultimately, I didn't hearken after school, my school years. Like I was ready to kind of get working and get moving. I actually started working when I was super young. I was really motivated by that. So I used to, work in, I don't know, a shop called jumpers at Santon City and do things like that. So yeah, that's kind of like my life.
I mean, Ro, Kevin, we'll have a chat to you in a moment, but I don't want to pick up this point with Ro. Is just that, I mean, if there's something I'm missing where I am now in Australia, then it's this thing that you mentioned about Sedgefield and so on. I remember before I can almost remember, I was younger than 5 and 4. We always went to Glenmore Beach in the south coast in Durban, south coast of Natal at the time, and then we went to Glenmore Beach every year at the end of the year for 3 or 4 weeks, and eventually my dad and 2 other people built holiday apartments there. I think it was called Itongazi, and then we had a holiday there every year, and of course you met up with people who came there every year themselves, and it was a magic time because every year you would meet up with the same kids, you'd grow up with them, and
it was the best.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that when you move countries like this and so on, that tradition is hard to replicate. But anyway, that was at least for me. So Kevin, going on to Ben's question. So I grew up in Randburg, which is just like not far from you guys were. But, so tell us a little bit about your childhood and where you grew up.
I grew up in Parkmore. We had 2 residents. We had one, and we lived in 10th Street when I was born. I can remember that quite clearly. I can remember the roads were still sand roads then.
Wow.
I can remember my grandpa used to come, and he used to come. I remember him parking on the pavement there. He used to sneak sweets to me when my mom wasn't looking. Then we moved down to, I think it was 6th and Lillian Avenue. We lived there for a while. I think I finished primary school. I went to Montrose Primary. I had lots of memories of that, riding bikes up that steep Lillian Avenue and racing with my friends and falling off bikes and playing soccer, wearing my Liverpool kit.
So you went with your bike to school, right?
Yeah, I would ride to school in the morning. I remember my dad bought me this lovely rally, and it was a yellow one, and I was really chuffed with it. And we used to race around in the mornings. Then I went to Sandown High. When we moved down to, my mum and dad bought a place that was getting built in River Club. We lived in River Club, quite near the golf course there. I used to shimmy over the fence, and I used to take some golf clubs, and I used to go, and there were 3 holes I could play. And I used to always look out for the greenskeeper. He used to see me now and again. He'd come charging down on his motorbike. And I left a few balls behind. I have to grab my clubs and just run for the fence and jump over. So I went to Sandown High. I played a bit of rugby, but my big sport was show jumping. I used to ride out in Kyalami. Not quite sure how that happened, but that's what I ended up doing. After matriculating, I went off the army. Went off to Beretta. First I went to Kimby, and then I went to Beretta, the horse and bike squad. And spent 2 years there. Then came back and went to Wits and studied economics and a bit of, I suppose, strategy. Ended up doing a bit of lecturing afterwards as well. My dad and my mom was an ice skater, so was my sister. My mom, that's one of the reasons she got into the United States. She skated in the Olympics. And got some special visa, some special skills visa to get in.
What year was the Olympics?
1960 in Squaw Valley, as a 16-year-old. And my sister was also an ice skater. She left South Africa probably in the probably 90s, something in the 90s as well. She went to skate for a holiday on ice and Disney and pretty much traveled the world ice skating. My dad he was an entrepreneur, had a printing business, and that's sort of my introduction, I suppose, to work. I mean, I used to go, and whenever it was holidays, my dad used to pack me in the car. We used to 7 o'clock in the morning, off we used to go. He had a building in his factory was in Berea at one stage, and then it moved. I can't remember what the area was called. It was quite close to Ellis Park. And my friend and I used to go and work there, and we used to clock in the morning, and we used to walk around collating things and delivering things, and I have some fond memories of those times. That's where I think I got my entrepreneurial inspiration, and realized that you didn't have to work in a big company or an organization, that you could figure it out yourself.
So it looks like there were two sides to you. There was the sporting side, and then your dad's entrepreneurial side. So, which one did you enjoy most when you were young?
That's a good question. I'd probably
It's
say
not a trick question, Kevin. It's just,
yeah. Yeah, I must say I quite enjoyed working there and just seeing how it operated, all the machines and the noise and the smell of ink and paper and just how you ran something. But I think probably I had quite a bit of enjoyment out of show jumping at one stage, or just riding. I was pretty much a loner as a kid, and it's not a team sport. And I found that just the solitude just suited where I was in my life. And there's something quite special about riding. It's a really difficult sport, and I had a lot of fun doing it. So I'd say probably the latter.
Yeah, and it's probably more dangerous than people think as well. It doesn't look like it. If you look at somebody, probably like anything in life, you look at somebody that can really do it well. It looks really easy, but it's quite a dangerous sport.
I fell off a few times. I think the worst part was actually I got kicked by a horse twice, and I can't tell you how excruciatingly sore that is. Got kicked in the same leg twice, and it was terrible. I don't recommend it at all.
Yeah. So let me go to this point, Kevin. So you I would imagine that doing those, especially horse riding and so on, it's not an inexpensive sport. But at the same time, did you get were you competitive in terms of colors and stuff like that? Did you did you ride for any province or something like that?
I'm not quite sure whether there was such things like provincial colours and stuff, but when I rode, we had there was sort of the top grade in children. You had something called CA, which was children's A grade. I managed to get to that level. Then in juniors, I got the junior A grade, and then I jumped at a senior level. I jumped in the A grade as well. I don't think they call it the 150 class now. So I managed to do okay in it.
He was apparently very good. That's what I've heard. I wasn't around at the time, but I've heard from friends that he was a very good rider.
Yeah, it's a strange sport. It's a sport. My opinion is that if you've got a really good horse and an average rider, will generally beat a really good rider on an average horse. So, but I was always restless near the end there. I always wanted to play golf. I wanted to play touch rugby. It was just other things I wanted to do, and I found it frustrating. And looking back on it, I feel it took too much of my 20s away from me. I just wish I'd run marathons and played more rugby and touch rugby and golf and stuff, but so be it.
Yeah. So what was the motivation for the horse riding? Was it yours, or was it your mother's or father's, or how did that work?
Yeah, I've never quite figured that out. I think my mom decided to take me to go and try horses once. There was where Sandown High is, it was opposite Sandown High, there was a Grayson Stables, and I went in, I think it was Wednesdays, and went and rode for a little bit. I seemed to enjoy it, and it just became a habit. And once I picked it up, I just continued to do it. It almost became just the default thing.
Great. So take us a bit forward. So you guys past school, you said you went to the army. I suppose, did you choose to go where you went, or was that just because of your background and your skills that they put?
No, I mean, I had no choice in going to Kimberley. That was one maintenance, and then once I was in one maintenance there was recruiters came around, sort of anyone, if you had any specialist skills, I said I knew how to ride horses. And from there, I got I think a corporal arrived one day and said, "You're getting transferred out of here." The downside, I had to do basics twice, and ended up in Potch. It was completely different to my experience in Kimberley. And Beretta was probably about 20 k's northeast of Potch. So it's a little farm all on itself, and it was quite wild at times. It was the really toughening up stage in my life. It was quite interesting. I was thinking about it the other day. Beretta was tough, but it was fun.
All right. So you did actually enjoy it, and lots of lessons and learnings from there?
Yeah, it was. The army's and if anyone's been, it's an interesting place to go to. I mean, I certainly questioned it at the time while I was doing it, and it's a paradoxical double-edged sword thing. You sort of see the benefit afterwards. It taught me a lot about human nature, about how the English and Afrikaans guys could actually get on, and the stories we've been told were actually bollocks. And that some of the best friends I had at the end were sort of Afrikaans guys, and we all got on, and the narratives and the crap we believed when we met were just that. And a friend of mine sent me a link the other day of some of those old days of Beretta, and it just sort of took me back to being young again. And I just remembered what it felt like to be running around in that dust and to be young and just taking it for granted.
Well, I would also imagine that, I mean, it happened to me, was that, when I arrived in Potch also for my first 3 months before I moved from there, I didn't know that people like that existed in South Africa. And so because I came out of a middle-class sort of family in Randburg, and suddenly you're in this world where things are different, and that's when you just grow up like instantly. I was 17, and before you know, I felt like 25. Yeah.
But I think the way you described it, actually I resonate with that as well, because I felt like that as well, that paradoxical side of the army. And I still think about it today, and one given day I can convince myself it was the best thing ever, and then other days I thought, gee, what a waste of 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you say.
So yeah, no, I get where you're coming from, but yeah, if you do look back at it, there was some, I suppose that's part of the human mind. We remember some of the good stuff, and that it can be, it was probably not a bad thing at the end of it.
So Ro, if we get to you after school, so you went to uni, I would imagine?
Yeah, I went to Wits Tech, actually.
Oh, yeah, I think you said so,
Yeah.
Yeah, and what did you study?
I did marketing and advertising, or marketing communications.
Yeah.
At the campus down in Doornfontein, and it was actually a great course, because it was kind of like 2 years full-time study, and then you kind of had to do a year of kind of practical, and then you wrote exams, and it was actually great. But it was tough at the same time, because it was just at that time where South Africa was coming out of, I matriculated in 89, so it was like 92, 93. So just when everything was changing, right? And everything was like, nobody knew what was happening. Everyone thought no one was going to get a job. It was crazy. It was hard times, right? I feel like now that I have all these years behind me, it kind of like every year feels like that now. If you think about how everyone tells the doom story. So, but that time was tough, and South Africa was going through all those changes, which were amazing. I remember being at Technikon, and all those riots that used to happen. Remember the stuff that used to happen through Joburg, and it was a crazy time. But everything was so alive. People were, just alive with what the possibility was. And so I studied at Wits Tech, and then I got into advertising. Straight after that, and it wasn't a career that I thought I was going to get into. I thought I'd get into more on the marketing side of things, but I've actually stayed in advertising my full career, and it's been a wonderful career, and I've loved it.
You still do that today?
I do. I'm an SVP in a big agency here in Chicago. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. So, was that before you started studying? Was that what you envisaged? I know you said you didn't want to go and didn't necessarily think advertising, but why was the whole thing about marketing and all of that attracted to you?
Interesting. I always wanted to be a nurse, actually, which was so. By ending up in marketing, I think my aunt was a nurse, and I was intrigued by the whole thing. I loved the idea of nursing, but she always used to tell me, you don't get paid. Like it's not a good place if you're wanting to kind of earn some money. So, and at that time, I think marketing was also becoming not that it wasn't around, but marketing was really starting to become a role that, you got to be at the seat of the table where, where executive decisions were made, and people started talking marketing, and marketing strategy started becoming a real driver of businesses. And so I had a lot of friends at the time who were working already, and they were encouraging of like marketing as a career. So yeah, that's how I got into it.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting.
So take us a little bit forward. So you guys are now working. How did you meet, and how did you start off in South Africa together?
I had a great group of friends. We were the Stokvel girls. I mean, if that can ring true with everybody on this podcast.
That's right.
So we had a group of girls who we all met at kind of like work. Like we became firm friends like through work. Some of them had been at Rhodes together, and then we kind of like all met in Joburg, and we started this little Stokvel thing. And we traveled in a pack, right? We all kind of like, we did everything together. And a very good friend of mine, Shona, she had just broken up with a boyfriend, and we had a group of guy friends that were kind of like adjacent to us. And they had said, "Oh, we got this guy who's just broken up with his girlfriend. Shona and Kevin should meet each other."
Okay.
So Shona and Kevin met each other. But the good news is that Shona and Kevin, really liked each other as friends, but there was nothing else. And Kevin and I met through the social circle, and kind of like didn't start dating immediately. There was some time between kind of like when we met and when we started dating. But yeah, we started dating, and here we are.
There you go. So
Yeah, it was through good friends, and it was the best way to meet people.
Yeah.
I mean, Kevin, you took a long time to make up your mind. I mean, you only got married when you were 35.
Yeah.
He was waiting for the best thing.
I see. Yeah. So, all right. And so then, but you seem, if I'm right, you kind of just hanged around Joburg, and that was that, right? You didn't go anywhere else. I mean, you didn't live anywhere else in South Africa.
No, we both stayed in Joburg. I mean, we didn't go away to study. We, we were both kind of very Joburg bound. Yeah, yeah.
Now, maybe that's so. You started in advertising, and Kevin, what did you do then? I mean, what were you an entrepreneur then already, or did you work for somebody?
So when I was still studying, I became I got the I was the marketing arm for some guys that were manufacturing furniture out in Britterstrom, and I would go around and I would introduce their product to a whole bunch of retailers, and hopefully get sales and take a commission on that. And that is sort of I can remember one night flying the midnight flight down to Durban, getting down there at 1:00. Sleeping in the car for a little bit, then driving around to a bunch of retailers to try and get listed with all this sort of stock in the back. But anyways, my dad gave me a whole bunch of crap about the fact that I needed a real job, and so I went and I applied for and I ended up working at Unidata, or Unisys at the time, for Nick Frangos. And I was a technology strategist, and I lasted all of 18 months. And I just in the bottom of my soul could feel that I just didn't fit in the corporate space at all. I just felt, I can remember sitting there one day thinking that probably 70% of my time was spent working, maybe even less, 65. The other bit was spent playing politics, and I just played that forward and thought that's a lot of wasted energy. And certainly given the experience I'd had with my dad and sort of seeing how you can build something. I remember reading something one day about, I left and I went to a smaller company just briefly. And then when I was working there, I read an article on computer-based simulation, the fact that you could model something and then simulate it and predict performance and explain why things were behaving the way they were and potentially even optimize it became very interesting to me. And so I flew to America, took all my savings, and I traveled around for about two weeks and came back with a distributorship for 2 products. And then hired somebody. His name was Lionel. He was the only aeronautical engineer I've ever met. We're still friends. And off we went, starting to try and model and simulate things. And we then turned that into a business process engineering company, and did a couple of other things, information architecture stuff. And then I've sort of done a whole bunch of other things. I've done, written software in the electronic invoice presentation and payment space. It's deeply ironic, but I owned a business called Floyd's 99, which is a rock and roll barbershop for guys and girls, which I had in 4 ways, ran that for about 10, 12 years. Fascinating business. Had a consumer brand that I had listed in Sportsman's Warehouse. I had a consulting business. I was really interested in strategy and growth and why companies grew and why they destroyed so much value when they were growing. Ended up doing some guest lecturing at Gibbs and at Wits and at Cape Town and the business school, and just worked with management teams around just trying to figure out their strategy and for the purpose of figuring out the growth equation. And that's what I sort of ended up doing.
Why do you think? You're talking to 2 people that have spent quite a bit of time in corporate. I'm not in there anymore, but Ben is still doing that. Why do you think this is something that doesn't work for you? What is in your what sits in your mind that makes it hard for you to work in a corporate world? I know what they do, but I want to know about you.
I just think I've got a rebellious spirit. I mean, I think that's what it is. And she's shaking her head. And I just, I find the process, I find having to follow process and rules and follow hierarchy and having to report to somebody and justify why my ideas are potentially better, or it's too constraining. And I feel like I'm going to internally combust. It creates massive amounts of dissonance in me.
I can't remember if we talked about your siblings earlier. Do you have any?
Yeah, I've got a sister.
Okay. So do you think it's also coming from your dad that was an entrepreneur, because you saw how that worked?
Absolutely. I also sometimes I reflected, and I think maybe had I had a better experience early on, where I found the process a little bit easier, then I maybe it would have been different. But I was just always restless, and so I was always looking for a problem that could be interesting to solve. And I think the thing that's guided me through my career is I've never primarily been driven by money. It's always been try and find something that's really interesting, an interesting problem, something that you can really get your teeth into and you can find a differential solution for, that if you solve, has some impact. And so that was generally my thinking when I was younger. And I felt my freest in doing that. It was really hard, and it continues to be. Entrepreneurship's not for everybody, and it's you make money and you lose money.
Ben and I talk about it often. So Ro, I think you're the opposite, right? I mean, you're an
structure.
You're an SVP in an advertising company, and I mean, you probably love politics and love how the company operates.
Well, I don't think I love politics.
Or you can play politics, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm probably not very good at it. I could hone my skills there, I think. But I've loved advertising. What I've loved about being in advertising is that whilst it's corporate, it's not a bank, right? It has never been the constraining kind of corporate that many corporates can be. Advertising has afforded me so many opportunities in that creative space. So while I'm on the business side and I run accounts, you're always involved in the creative process. You're selling ideas, you're producing stuff, you're making things, you're interested, you work across so many different categories. I mean, I've worked across airlines, car rental, beer, whiskey, South African tourism, Toyota, Lexus, so many things. I mean, you kind of like become you know a little bit about a lot of things, and I've loved that about my career. And I've loved the creative process. I've loved the fact that you can go from strategy to creative to producing stuff to making things to changing people's behaviors. And when you do good work, it's phenomenal. A lot of it's bad. I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot in between. But I've really been lucky to have worked with some incredible minds and some really great creative campaigns. So I've been lucky.
So let's think a little bit about when you guys started thinking about leaving South Africa. You obviously settled in Joburg. You're both doing well, got careers. So what made you think of leaving South Africa, and when did that moment come along?
That's a long story. So when my mom and my stepdad, Dad Graham, they nationalized, I think in about 2002, 2003, somewhere around there, 2001 maybe. They moved to Denver and sort of stuck it out. Had some really, really tough time, just landing. There's a really interesting backstory there and how it all happened. It actually happened via my sister. Who'd been dating somebody who managed to offer Graham a job, and my mom was already there, and sort of took off from there. Once they had an American citizenship, my mom sort of put a bit of pressure on us. This was about 2003, 4-ish, to apply for a visa, a sponsored visa through her. And we were at that point in time, we Max wasn't even born. And we just been married for probably 3 years, 2 years at the time, and we thought, anyway. So we decided.
I never wanted to leave the country at all. I was always about kind of like being the solution, being kind of like part of the new South Africa.
Yeah.
It was so important to me.
And so we filled in all the paperwork and sort of forgot about it. Now and again we'd check in, and we heard absolutely nothing. And then I remember I got a phone call from my mom. It was like 10 o'clock at night. I don't know why I remember that. I was just like, why is she phoning? There's something wrong. And she told me that, the visa application had come up for processing, and, did we want to continue with it?
And that was 14 years.
That was 14 years later. Yeah, it took 14 years. And subsequently found out, so that particular visa type, they only issue apparently 220,000 of that type throughout the world, and they're obviously allocated to a whole bunch of countries. So you just have to wait your turn. And when it popped up, then you start. And it's quite a tough process, that you've got to go through. And you had this really big file at the end with police clearance certificates, and that you've been discharged from the army correctly, and all that all that stuff that So it was it just took a long time, and then once we decided to do it, it just happened quite quickly.
But Kevin, that's matter of fact that you say, but Ro was, I think, in a different emotional state about all of this. So I've got two questions, Ro. The one is why was it important for you to be a solution in South Africa, or part of the solution? And how did you take all of this? Now it's going to have to leave South Africa. What was that for you about?
Yeah. I think it was, by this time it was like 2018, right? So we obviously, so much had changed in South Africa. So after the elections and kind of like being young and seeing. I mean, I remember being at the Rugby World Cup, the 1995 Rugby World Cup game. Like, I was there in the stadium, and I was beyond excited to be part of, where South Africa was going. And let's be honest, it didn't track quite the same as what we had hoped it to track.
Yeah.
Like, for us, and we started to get really concerned about things. We had this young son, and was he going to have the opportunities that we wanted for him ultimately? Things had changed. We were sitting with load shedding every day. Our value of our house was declining every month in Johannesburg. Everything felt like it was getting harder and harder. And
there've been quite a few robberies around us. They sort of ratcheted our front front gates
Yeah,
up
we
and
had a
kicked our
home
front door in
invasion.
and all that stuff. Yeah, so we experienced a bit of that.
I got caught in a roadblock one night coming home from work, and I was sober. I mean, I had been working actually on a pitch, so it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and I got pulled over, and these guys tried to frame me up that I was drunk, that I'd been drinking, and try to get a bribe out of me. And it was just, I was like, really, this is what I'm dealing with when the police are kind of like the bad guys. That for me was probably the thing that did it for me when I got pulled over by the police. Yeah, I think it was like I felt so unsafe as a woman driving home at 1 o'clock in the morning, when you see flashing lights and you think, oh my God, that's like dangerous. I shouldn't, this is not where I want to be. And it was the police. And so that for me, I think, was the turning point.
Yeah. So what year was Max born?
2007. So, yeah.
I think my motivation was one of the things that had really bugged me was obviously my mum and Graham had moved over. My sister was traveling around the world. I was bugged by the fact that I pretty much lived in probably a 10-kilometer radius from where I'd always gone to school, and that sort of recklessness again, I think, was just inside me. I felt I hadn't had a big enough adventure in my life. Certainly the entrepreneurship was interesting, and I'd had to reinvent myself many times, but I just felt I needed to sort of Daniel Boone style go west. It was just, so when the opportunity came up, we looked at it and we said to ourselves, this has taken 14 years. On what basis can you say no? And we're getting to the age where we probably either going to have to do this now or never do it. And so for me, it was all about having an adventure, one big adventure, and one last big adventure in my life.
Mm-hmm. So was there a lot of discussion around that, or was it an easy decision between the two of you?
It was hard. I mean, my family's still there, my mom and dad, and we were giving up a lot. We were fully aware of what we were giving up. Our beautiful lifestyle, our beautiful home, our community. All those things that everybody must speak about on this podcast. Like, you really weigh it up, and you're giving up. You're giving up a lot. Giving up. Every Sunday we used to get together with my brother and sister-in-law and their two boys, and Max had these cousins that he adored, and we didn't go a week without seeing each other, and we spent holidays with my sister and my folks, and so we knew that all of that was gonna dry up, and you can tell yourself that, but you don't really understand it. Like, it's we weighed up the pros and we understood, but sure, once it's gone, it's hard. You realize how much you give up.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that, just listening to yourself around, being part of the stock fella, and that's part of who you are, and being close to your friends and being part of a group.
Yeah.
What we've listened to people saying to us on this pod is that those are the moments they really miss when they go over, because that was a support structure and infrastructure around you that you suddenly don't have anymore.
Yeah, and it's who you were. It's like your identity. It's it's the thing that define. You just, the familiarity of it.
But how long? I mean, you came end of 2019. I mean, and everything changed early 2020. Some countries were very proactive. Other countries were in denial about all of this. And some countries really overdid it. We were in I was locked down for 2 years in Victoria. Anyway, but when did this dawn on you, this missing of things? Because it doesn't happen immediately, because you arrive there and now you've got 100 things to do just to survive.
When did it dawn on us? I think the COVID thing was, it kind of like changed. It pushed things out, maybe because everybody was going through this crazy situation, right? So I think our onboarding into America was completely unnatural, than maybe what it is for most people. So we kind of got here, and the friendships that we were trying to kind of build just came. I mean, we couldn't, Max didn't see another child for 4 or 5 months because he didn't have a friendship bubble that he was kind of like connected to. So it was just us, and we kind of like enjoyed it, right? It was almost nice that the world slowed down for us to catch our breath. I always say that it was almost a blessing, like we could like, okay, because it was, I could feel the pace that I hit work at in Chicago was different.
But did you come into a job?
Yes, I did. I transferred with the ad agency that I worked for in South Africa. I was able to get a transfer, and so I stayed in the company that I'd been with for 18 years.
Yeah. Oh, that probably was a big differentiator for you guys because,
Yeah.
if you landed in COVID and you were going to have to look for work, and it would have been really hard.
Very hard. Yeah, I was very lucky. We were very lucky that, the company, was, and they were fantastic. They really.
But tell us a little bit about, we're really interested to hear of the differences and similarities. You can't talk about the differences, but if you tell us, what was it like to settle into the US as a South African, because you still very much have got the same accents. You're not American. And everybody knows that. This is in Australia, right? You're from South Africa, yes. Or you're not from here. So how was it getting into America, Kevin?
Well, it was tough. Just picking up on the COVID bit. I arrived into Chicago knowing absolutely nobody. Sort of been here, sort of probably 2.5 months, and they start locking everybody down. And so you're stuck in this basement downstairs. It's bloody cold, and you're just disconnected from the world. And so I think that's when you start realizing what you're missing. I've got my indoor bike. I've just been a cyclist for a long time, and so anything that was familiar to you, riding out on the cradle, the coffee that you drank, just the routines and stuff that you took for granted, you suddenly become aware of the fact that you become aware of it because it's just not there. And you're in the process of trying to figure out new routines. You're trying to figure out, it becomes quite existential. Who am I? What's my new identity? How am I going to build it? No one knows me. And how do I get myself reestablished? And I remember talking with one of the dads that I'd met, and he was in the sales space. And I remember him telling me that he was, they couldn't call anybody because no one was at work, and so they were using a service that would make 400 calls a day, and that somehow had cell phone numbers of execs. And he said out of the 400 calls, maybe he said 20 or 30 might pick up, and you had 15 seconds once they picked up to try and land a pitch to try and get a call. And he said he would sit there for 8 hours a day, and he said it was just absolutely draining, and they would get really angry with him about, how did you get all of my cell phone number, and you needed to get through that. And he said it wasn't that successful, and it was costing a lot. So it just felt at that particular time, it felt like really, really hard.
But what were you trying to set up, Kevin?
So I had a consulting business in Africa that that had done well, and I was essentially trying to repurpose it into America. And so the way I pitched, I sat in front of guys and we spoke about problems and issues, and I would write a proposal and I would engage it, and that just disappeared. So there was no human contact anymore. It became very, very difficult, and so. It was a real way.
Did you have any clients that when you came over, or did you have to start?
No. So I pretty much. I sold a business when we left, and shut the consulting business down. Had to tie all that up, and I genuinely had my view was that I was going to start from scratch. It was new beginnings. That was the way I looked at it.
When we spoke to our previous guests, the one thing, Ben, you remember, he said that, very successful in South Africa, knew a lot of people, had a lot of contacts, could pick up the phone to any manner of person because of the company that he worked for. And when he came to Australia, every door was closed. Who are you? We don't know you. Was that your experience as well, Kevin?
Yeah. Absolutely. And obviously everybody's, what happened is that you're sort of the way you had it to, given that you weren't able to, I never had a Rolodex, so you don't know who to phone, you're trying to build a network. And so I relied on LinkedIn a lot. So I was doing a lot of writing, posting a lot of stuff, trying to, productize what I was doing, but so was everybody else. So the competition just, scaled. And so it became, my ability to write, I think, improved. My ability to think about, product improved. There's a lot of stuff that I got benefit from, but it was a grind. It really was.
And if we can just quickly touch on Max. So he came over, no friends, nobody around him. How did he go with this transition?
Yeah, he finished 6th grade in South Africa, and so we actually timed it so that we could come over end of the school year, and he could start 6th grade. He could go into the middle of 6th grade again and do like half of 6th grade, so that he had some transition time. And only now, or a couple of months or years afterwards, we realized just how hard it really was for him. Like he tells us now about how scared he was going into that school on that first day, and he was a trooper. He really was. He was incredible. But he went into this school, and we tried to find a little Catholic school, because he had been at a Catholic school in South Africa. So we tried to find something that he would be familiar with, and but it's a completely different experience. His school that he was at in South Africa had this massive swimming pool, fields, outside. The kids played outside at break. Typical school. Here he went into a school in the city with everything was in a building, and the playground was on the top of the building, with turf on the ground, and the kids, and it was winter, middle of winter,
and there were girls.
Oh yeah, and there were girls, and
there's always some positives.
An all boys. Yeah, so it was crazy. He really didn't know what. His eyes were like this. He couldn't believe it. And then obviously at the same time, he was 12, 13, and so he then started going through puberty. I don't know what was worse, the fact that we were in lockdown, we had moved countries, or that puberty was happening.
But
it was,
yes,
it was tough for him.
Kevin shared with me an article he wrote in Medium, and he talked a little bit about, going from South African sport into baseball, and was that a moment for, because I assume Max probably got something from you, Kevin, in terms of sporting abilities. Sorry, Ro, I'm not saying you don't have, but you.
No, I'm so glad he didn't get much.
You volunteered that right up front, so. But
she's understanding herself.
Yes, but anyway, so was that a point for settlement for Max to get into baseball?
Yeah, I think Anton, that was the turning point for Max. If we owe anything a gratitude, a deep debt of gratitude, it's baseball. So we've been locked down for going on, it was probably 4 months, and so all the parents were looking to try and get their kids out, and just so they could play. And so baseball, was something that they potentially do. They played with masks, which was mad. In fact, they were even playing basketball. So he tried to play basketball, but the kids had played it since they were young, and so he's really athletic, but he had to learn to dribble and stuff, and he'd been a good cricketer, and so we were trying to get him into a baseball team, because we felt that would be a good transition for him. And for some reason, I think it was the 14th of July or June. I think it was July. We bought him a bicycle, and here's an interesting story for serendipity. We bought him a bicycle, and we was testing it out on the road. And we went past the neighbors on the other side, and they had a hitting net up, and one of the kids was hitting into it. And the one gentleman, whose name was Kevin as well, he called him over and said, "Can you hit? You want to have a hit?" And Max said, "Yeah, okay." And the ball was on a tee, and he started hitting it into the tee. And I looked at him for a bit, and he looked at another lady, and next minute he got on the phone and said, "I've just phoned somebody, and I think you should take your son down to this tryout at this place called Oz Park." And
by then
that was really significant.
Then he's never played baseball before that, right?
He had never played baseball. He had maybe swung a baseball bat we used to laugh a bit at home before we left. When Graham used to come out, we had a sort of a broomstick, and Graham used to throw tennis balls at him, and he used to like bash them around, and he's got a really good hand-eye coordination, and so. That just lucked us into this trial, and I can remember it clearly. I took him down to this trial, and there must have been, I don't know, 40 kids there, and he happened to be the last to go and hit. And I'd been watching that. So they were throwing 9 balls. I can even remember they were throwing 9 balls at each of the boys, and I would say that on average, each kid was hitting maybe 6 out of 9. And they threw 9 at max, and he hit all 9. But he just hit them, and like he just bashed them into the outfield. And I got a call the next day or an email the next day saying, listen, he's in the team, and you need to bring him to a game, which I think was 2 days later. And I was given instructions as to, what bat he needs. And, he needed to be a certain weight, and I didn't know what was going on. And I'd met some dad, and he told me to go to a place called Play It Again Sports, which actually used to be right next door to us. Walked in there, and we bought this little bat, which is still downstairs. And he went and played his very first baseball game. It was hilarious. He sort of knew what he had to do. And so the first ball that comes into the zone, sort of outside right, which would have been called clearly a clear ball. But his instinct as a cricketer was he cut it. He just he middled it into the side of the cage. And so the coach said, well, look, that's great, but you've got to hit it in the dime. You've got to hit it sort of that way. And okay, you reckon. And he ended up, I think he hit the first one along the ground. He didn't. He got caught. So he got round out before he got to first. And I think in his second game, he hit a home run.
Oh, wow.
And that was it. And that he built an entire identity around it, and just got into better and better teams, and just excelled. Ended up getting a national ranking, and just become really good at it.
So what is his plans with that?
He wants to wants to play collegiate baseball, and he's on track for it. He unfortunately injured himself last year. He had a labrum tear, which sort of and a key year, which is your junior year, just where they do a lot of the recruiting, and so he struggled. He was in pain a lot, and so he played through. But at this point in time, he's got into some colleges, and he's going to go try it. He wants to play.
So I actually. Reflecting on it, and I've said it a few times on this podcast, Kevin, it's great for the kids, and the kids generally are amazing. They're very resilient and adaptable and flexible.
Yeah.
But going through a similar experience than yourself, it's good for the kids, and it's fantastic, but it's also good for us as parents, I mean, we do find a bit of a sense of belonging, because you meet with other dads, and especially around that puberty stage, you realize that they listen to everybody except their dad.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's true.
And but you meet other dads, you go on tour with them, or you do things, and so it's actually a great avenue for people moving over as well. It doesn't have to be sport necessarily, but find something that you're passionate about.
Exactly.
But sport is very good in that sense, because it does pull people together, and it takes the differences out of us, and it pulls us together of what unites us. I mean, we're all there for the best interest of our kids, and we're all cheering for their team to win, and so
you can really get involved at a community level.
Exactly.
It's great.
Exactly. So
such a way.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a traditional sport or a new sport that you're trying out. It's about taking that leap of faith and getting involved.
That's exactly.
And I would imagine that, I mean, you're now 6 years into your journey, right? And so I would imagine that whole thing with Max getting settled and having something to do, and then obviously excelling in that, must have been very comforting to you, and say, okay, well, we can actually survive here, because that must have been a worry for you in the beginning, right? How would he adapt? How would he? Because he's an only kid, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he's been amazing. I mean, and he settled in really quickly. Once he was back at school, he kind of got into friendship groups. He took to it so well. I mean, he put his head down. He worked hard. I mean, he's he's now at, we're really proud of him. I mean, he's at a school here in Chicago. It's the number one school in in Illinois, number 5 in the US. Like he got into that school, he's done really well. He's got some great grades. He's on track to really, make his life here. And we say to him, would you ever think of going back to South Africa? And he'll be like, no, my home's here now.
Well, what is your thought about how are we going back, or how are you settled?
Sure. I mean, do you want to say?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's 6 years, but I think only now am I starting to feel, comfortable in America. I'm certainly, I don't know what it means to be American. In fact, Romaine and I were talking about it last night. I'm a South African American.
Yes.
But I'm starting to figure out what it's about, and I'm starting to feel comfortable in it. And it's and I've got my expectations of myself and the environment and the potential here. It's started to become more congruent to me. It's something that I think I want to stick at. I have no need to go back to South Africa at this point in time, other than go on holiday. But I think my future's here. And I'm comfortable with that.
You guys been back since you've been in the States?
Only me. Kevin and Max haven't. I've been back 3 times for a wedding and to see my parents.
Okay.
Max wants to go back. He wants to go to the Kruger. He's really wants to go to the Bushvelds.
No, I think that's a good
I think we all feel like that, right? It's like we miss.
But it's your journey is not different than probably most people immigrating, in the sense that it takes a long time. It takes 6 months to buy, to find out where you can buy what. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight,
Exactly.
And then you kind of have that, and then all manner of things happen, and then the sort of first year you see a South African thing, and then you get all mopey, and then eventually you get past the point, and I think that if you can build a good career, you got some people that you now know, and especially when your kids are sort of making it, settling, and it makes it also easier for you. And I mean, you're 6 years in the journey. Most people that we speak to in Australia tell us it takes 10 years to feel settled.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd heard that it was 10% of your age when you move, and I feel like that's probably not far off. But yeah, I mean, 10 years is it's a long time. But yeah.
I'm going to take that. I'm going to take that one away from you, and or take that one on row, and I'm going to use that stat. I think that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
So I've just learned something. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I think it's also, it's a mindset. It's interesting. I think sort of for us, once we got our American citizenship, which was, Romaine was a year ago, 3 days ago, and I was probably about a month later. February. Our mindset just changed. And it's amazing when your mindset changes and your expectations of yourself change, how I don't know how it reconfigures stuff, but it does. And I think for the first, 2025 was a year where we felt more comfortable. We felt that we know how to live in America. We understand Chicago well enough now, and we can see our way forward.
What is your sort of top 3 things or so that you'd say if somebody wants to immigrate to America, if that's still possible, and I'm sure it is? What are the things that you don't think about, where you need to watch out for? Sorry, it's a difficult question, probably.
I mean, it's a really tough question.
Yeah.
But I would say, so the question's America specific. So I think we grow up watching American movies, and they speak English, and we sort of understand the culture. We think, I think South Africa is, it's got a sort of American Western kind of influence. But sort of looking at it from a distance and watching movies and living in it is completely different. Graham, my stepdad, always says, just because they speak English, that's the only common denominator we've got here, and even the English they speak is different. And you just walk into a dislocation. And so the advice I would give them is, the first piece of advice I would give is don't get overwhelmed by the amount of change that you need to overcome. that you need to absorb and work with. That's the first thing. The second thing would be what I did is I found, and I think I wrote about it in the essay, just this idea of self-sabotage. So when I arrived here, and maybe it was COVID, I felt like a guest. I was on this green card. I felt like I really had to behave. I had to accept stuff that I maybe wouldn't have in South Africa. I think I referred to it as an apprenticeship, and that just kept me on the back foot. It kept me almost a bit apologetic. And I think as soon as you land, you need to be bold. You need to be clear as to what you want. You need to get active. You need to get useful. You need to build network. You need to build friendships. You need to get busy. And you can't think about the past. You almost need to forget about it. You need to. What I did is just. It's a life I lived. It's not going to help me in any particular way. And in the here and now, what's my next best move? And how can I live in a positive, affirmative, generative way right here and now? And so I think my advice would just be don't self-sabotage and be as bold as you can.
Yeah, and I'll build on that. I think you also can't compare your life to South Africa. You cannot go, oh, I had that big house, I had that, I had help, I had this, I had that. Like, what you can't look at what you don't have. You've got to look at what you do have. I think that is so important. Like, I mean, we've grown so much here. Like, and I think we wouldn't have back in South Africa. We were complacent, right? We did everything the same. And so coming here, I think I'm saying two things. One is don't compare your life. It's not the same life. It's a completely different life, and you've got to embrace it in all shapes and forms. Like, enjoy doing the washing and enjoy doing the house cleaning because it has to get done, right? Enjoy the fact that there's unbelievable art galleries, it's a 20-minute train ride from your house. Go and actually see those things. Yeah. Take advantage of the things that people want to come to America for. But just don't compare and don't think that your life is going to be the same, because it's not going to be anything like you have in South Africa.
It's not a replication exercise. If that's what you're coming to do, try and replicate, you're coming here to actually you're re-engineering your entire life. But not just your life, you re-engineer your identity. And I've often said to Romaine, look, the person you're talking to right now, I'm older than I was when I left, but I'm not the person I was. It's
neither of us.
Yeah, it wrestles something out of you that you just didn't know.
No, this is wonderful advice, Ben. I mean, I'm hearing things like, expect and know that change is going to be significant. I think is the first thing, and then other thing that Kevin said, it's one foot in front of the other, right? Don't look back. And Rowe talks about and I think it's such an important point. If you start comparing what you have now and what you had, and try to go, is this good, bad, or indifferent, then you're just going to mess it all up. And then what you don't do, and I think that's your other piece of advice, Rowe, is that you're saying, embrace that what is here. Go and look for the things that are wonderful. If you say go to the art gallery and. I was overseas last week, and I came back for the airport, and I got onto a train, and I sat on the train for 3 hours, and it was just the most magical thing. And in my previous life, that was not possible, really.
Exactly.
And it was, and that's what you're saying. Embrace those things. Go and find the things that you can be grateful for. And know that you're going forward and not backwards, and I think the other piece of it is, and you guys have worked very hard at it, is to make sure that you help your kid or kids to settle, because there's a saying, Ben, that says happy wife, happy life, but I think there's another one that says happy kids, happy life, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So if I can also tell you guys that, as we said, this is our 21st episode, and what you guys is going through and what you've told us today is pretty much, I call it same but different than everybody else that we speak to. Your destination is different, but what you're going through and what you experience is the same as everybody else. And all the guys, and I think having lived in the States for a little while, I think the transition might be a little bit easier to Australia because of the sport and stuff like that, and the same hemisphere and the weather. But other than that, everything is exactly the same. And I think what I hear in any case, guys, is this word that I spoke about a little bit this week is trajectory. You guys, it's not about the destination; it's about the journey that you're going through and what you experience. And what I'm hearing from you is a positive trajectory all the time. You're still going up. You're still not there where you want to be. You're still on that journey, and that in itself is not a bad thing. It's it keeps us alive. It keeps us young. It keeps us on our
Exactly.
toes. So just embrace that. And understand that. Okay, it's part of what we're doing and part of where we're going. So. Well done on the journey and what you guys achieved. That's quite remarkable.
Yeah, and thank you.
I mean, I'd take it even further. I think it's a gift you give yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe only after 6 years you can start seeing it, but it is a. I think I don't know any other experience that can transform you from the inside out as well as immigration can.
Yeah, you can.
And that's for the better, I think. And so, and for that I'm grateful. I think we all grateful.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention is just in terms of if you are coming with your family, don't underestimate how at any point in time, in our case, anyone, Romaine, myself, or Max, we all had our own struggles. And how do you stay together? How do you talk about it? How do you express your happiness and your sadness, your disappointments and your expectations as a family? How do you grow together? How does the collective work and deal with what's in front of you? That's something that you need to contend with, because it can bind you. It does bind you.
And I think, it's such an important point, but I think there's another truth as well, is that, when you put yourself in more adversity, you bring yourself with you. So if you have a disaster in South Africa as a family, don't think it's going to get better, somewhere else. There's things you need to fix, and that will come with you. Doesn't matter where you are. And you guys are obviously testament to the fact that you are a strong family. You know what your values are. We never spoke about manners, but we said that. And if that's a value that you have, then those are things that are important to you, and if you stay together and through the adversity, because it's a tough thing to transition like this. It really is. Yeah, it's fantastic. So we've had a fantastic recording here, and really want to thank you for your time and reaching. I mean, Kevin, you reached out to us. We didn't go and look you up, and so thank you for that. Really appreciate that, and it's been such a wonderful conversation with you, Kevin, and with you, Romaine. Really appreciate it. Ben, any last words?
No, just thank you, guys. Appreciate, and just stay positive as you are. Obviously, that's and just keep going up, keep going forward. That's important.
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
Well,
Thank you. Yeah, it's been
Thank you,
great.
Ben. Thank you, Anton. Enjoy the warmth that side. It was -16 here yesterday.
yeah, we've had a terrible summer in terms of heat, but it's last 2 weeks has been great. It started to rain, which is really nice. When you're from Africa, you appreciate rain.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. We really appreciate it
Bye,
as
Ben.
well.